Hello and welcome to this edition of Council Corner, your news and information show about the members of Richland County Council. Today, we're talking to Richland County Council member Bill Malinowski, the representative for District 1, which includes the northwest portions of the county. How are you? And thank you for being here, Councilman.
I'm fine, thank you, Stephanie,
It's
for
been
having
so
me
hard to get you on camera. You've been hard to nail down.
I try to stay busy out and about in the community as much as I can.
All right, so tell us about the region, your district.
Well, my district encompasses the Chapin area that lies within Richland County, the Irmo portion of Richland County, along with Ballantyne, Dutch Fork, White Rock, and a lot of folks don't know it, but we even have a small portion of Little Mountain mailing address way up there in the northwest corner.
So you have a large geographical region.
It's quite large, and I didn't realize how large it was until I actually started driving it. And those miles adding up along with the gas bills, you realize how big it is.
And it would appear that your area is among, has been one of the fastest growing areas, but then you also still have some rural areas.
We have a lot of rural areas, Stephanie, and while there are some people that say I'm against development, that's totally untrue. I'm in favor of all the development they want, as long as that development coincides with the current zoning laws that we have.
Well, and I would assume that you also, not to say it like this, but the philosophy for growth and how policymakers manage that has changed over the last 30 or 40 years, and so I'm assuming that you really kind of want to see things done right.
That's what I was just going to add. We want good quality growth, not just helter-skelter type of development.
Which doesn't kind of make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. People jump over one area of residential because a piece of property may be out there at a good price and then want it rezoned commercial, and that's just not a good way of doing business. It puts a great burden not just on the residents in those areas, but on the county government as well, in order to have to upgrade and handle all the costs of the infrastructure that's got to be put in then.
Now, I know over the last several years, the Neighborhood Improvement Program, our planners have been working on master plans for county neighborhoods, and you have a community in which a master plan is.
I do, and of course the ones that were already done or currently going on were the Decker Boulevard area and the Broad River Road area where it meets Interstate 20 up to about Piney Woods Road. And then the Spring Hill community is what is next. And that Spring Hill community, however, when you take a look at the actual borders of the master plan for the Spring Hill neighborhood, you kind of start scratching your head because, as it was mentioned to me, these particular master plans are in hopes of developing development, business, and residential to coincide, to get along next to each other. But the actual boundaries for the Spring Hill Master Plan are 100% rural in nature. They're all residences, they're all farmland, they're all larger tracts of land. There's not one bit of commercial out there.
Well, eventually, because as growth pushes, people are going to want to be out there, and then you get the stores and things like that.
Stephanie, and staying with the land use plan, the comprehensive plan that Richland County has, we will not do that, and that's what I started when I said we can't hopscotch over things to get there. And I think what we're going to try to do is come up with a different type of master plan, and that master plan will not involve the business aspect of it, because even right now there's one of the larger tracts of land is slated to have a housing development put into it. And it is all zoned rural still. So what I'm looking at is, after the first of the year, I'd like to get a meeting with the residents of the Spring Hill community and see what their druthers are, because we're thinking—
And what their focus, what they would like to see.
Yes, several of them have already told me they'd like to see it remain rural. So I have spoken with our assistant administrators and found out that there's no reason we can't have a different type of a master plan.
Because that's your role as the policymaker, to kind of read the tea leaves, yes, and kind of say, hey, this may not necessarily fit for where we want to go.
That's right, and if we can maintain a rural master plan, and what we're thinking about is possibly some walking trails and bike paths and a little park and areas like this, because within this master plan area we already have a conservation easement. which I wouldn't mind talking about that a little bit for the folks.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that, as 11 council districts, some of them are completely 180 degrees different than other ones.
That's
Do
right.
you find that to be challenging? I know that you probably have an affinity maybe with some of the council members that also are dealing with rural issues, but how challenging is it as a policymaker to have to kind of compromise and to really kind of have your colleagues understand some of the uniqueness of representing, rural areas?
And it is a challenge, Stephanie, and that's why many of the particular ordinances that come before council members, when you've got 11 of them trying to come together and do what's right, it's very seldom a one-size-fits-all type of a solution. And you need to come up with alternative methods to address the rural areas along with the urban and suburban areas.
Well, I know that among the issues that you ran on is we're in some challenging financial times now, and you seem to really care about bringing financial accountability into the system. I mean, I think that the county does a very good job. The legislators and administrators, we've literally had very good audits and win budget awards, but it seems like you want to make sure that to the dollar and cents, and everyone, is really kind of living within our means.
I do want to make sure that if we're spending any money whatsoever out there, it is not our money, but it is the money of the people that's entrusted to us to do right with. And therefore, I really pick apart many of the items that come before us for us to make decisions on in the spending and the budgeting end of things.
Now, in addition, we've talked about some land use planning, we've talked about financial accountability. Are there any other issues that are of particular importance to you? As you know, there are many entities that the council may fund, but may not necessarily have the day-to-day responsibility for operating.
And that's an excellent point, Stephanie. One of the areas that the council has responsibility for funding is the Richland County Recreation Commission. And the Recreation Commission, once they receive the funding, they are their own entity and have to be responsible for the spending of the funds as council directed them to do so. And in my district, I have the Friars Gate Park over in Irmo. And I had heard through the grapevine that some people at one of the youth baseball games over there saying, well, that Bill Malinowski, it's because of him we don't have more bathrooms in the park and we don't have a bigger park. But that's not true. Bill Malinowski can only recommend to the Recreation Commission maybe what we'd like to see, but it's the Recreation Commission that ultimately has to have the final say. And in going back a little bit, when we're talking about the fiscal responsibility of the council and now of the Recreation Commission, when we had the $50 million bond that was approved by council for the Recreation Commission, I went to the Friars Gate Park and spoke with the management out there and even in the Valentine community area and asked, is there anything we need? I wasn't given any requests, so I can't come up with them on my own. So we need the people to have input into these matters if they want to get output on it.
And, I'm certain that all over the county, issues of recreation are very important, along with just the services that the county is responsible for directly funding. I'm sure that recreation does matter, and it probably can get people kind of riled up. So.
It does, Stephanie, and one of the areas right now that I just sent an email this morning to the Director of Recreation, Mr. James Brown, asking what we can do about the possible overcrowding for the youth baseball, softball, and t-ball season that will be coming up this spring, and we're looking into some possibilities of taking another site over in the Irmo area, which is the Dutch Fork Tennis Center. Now, I'm told that it's little to no use on that, so possibly we could move our t-ball program over to there, and it's something we'll have to work on and look at and see if it can be a good fit for that particular part of the youth baseball league.
All right, conservation. Let's talk about conservation. I think that the county department responsible for staffing the Conservation Commission. I think they have done a wonderful job in identifying areas throughout the county that could be preserved in perpetuity, that will never see development. Conservation easements in your district.
They have done that. I have a couple conservation easements in my district right now. I'd like to see other council members as well go out and talk to the people in these communities, in these areas of rural property, to see what can be done to try and bring more into the conservation easement program. And right now I'm in the process, I'm talking with one gentleman who has several acres. I spoke to him last week, and he's having someone from Richland County staff go out there and talk to him, and we may get another conservation easement.
Why do you think that it's important? And what an easement is, folks, is essentially a person kind of determined, getting paid by the county, not a large fee, but to not develop the property, to actually leave it the way that it is, and particularly it's good for watersheds and things like that. Why do you think it's important? Why are you supportive of those things?
I'm supportive of it because we need to have a certain area of our land out there to remain in its natural state, to remain green, to have open space for everyone, and especially when you're as far out as we are in the Northwest, it's good to have some of these actually historical tracks that have been there. Some people have the paper that goes with it handed down from the king back when South Carolina was first formed, and these are the things that we'd like to see remain as such. And so in trying to promote a good green environment, we need the conservation easements. And it's not to say that you cannot do anything with your property. You can. You write that into the easement. If you have 50 acres and you have children or grandchildren coming along that you'd like to be able to possibly have them build a house on, you can write that into the easement that we're going to have 2 or 3 houses on no more than X number of acres, and it's all put in there. And you will the property to your heirs just like you would any other property that's not under an easement. It's just that the restrictions will pass along also.
Perhaps so, not a 100-acre development would go on it. But
that's correct.
Okay.
And we need development as well to be compatible with that. So it's kind of what we're looking for out there in the Northwest is a happy balance between development and remaining rural.
All right, as we move forward into the coming year, I'm sure again, financial challenges, that sort of thing. What do you see as some of the major priorities that you'll be looking for, that the county will be tackling?
Wow, some of the major priorities.
We know that transportation probably is going to be one.
Transportation is going to be a big one, along with some of the other tax matters. I know that my colleague Mr. Jackson is talking about the possibility of a 1% tax, but that would be for growth type matters, for trying to build things like the Northeast Sports Complex, like the Lower Richland farmers market type of an area or recreational area. And something that I would like to see take place is in my area of Richland County, we have the only lake property, Lake Murray property in Richland County that's in District 1. We recently had the major boat launching facility closed. They're building apartments. It will be private. There'll be no longer any public launching of boats. And so what I'd like to see is to have some funds made available through the hospitality tax program that we can possibly buy some land and enter into a business-private relationship, I should say, excuse me, a public-private relationship with Richland County so that we can maybe move forward with creating another boating facility on Lake Murray. Yes, this will cost the taxpayers to pay money to have it done, but we will have income coming back from something like that eventually the taxes would go away because it would be a self-supporting item.
All right, we're going to switch gears now because I think you're a pretty interesting fellow. I mean, I think you write a lot. You have a career in law enforcement. Tell your constituents and the citizens of Richland County maybe something they didn't know about you, a little something about Mr. Bill Malinowski.
Well, a lot of people may not know, for those that just have heard about me and seen my signs up at election time, that I spent over 31 years with the FBI and retired as a special agent from the FBI.
A G-man.
A G-man.
We always get our man.
Something else they may not know, I will root for the Gamecocks except when they play the University of Alabama.
Really?
I went
You
to
are
school,
one of those?
I went to school in Alabama. I came into the FBI under Mr. J. Edgar Hoover way back in 1970.
Oh, wow.
So.
That's pretty interesting. And has that helped you? Has that experience helped you as a policymaker?
I think my FBI career definitely helped me, and that's one of the pet peeves I have is making sure that before you sign anything, you read it. You wouldn't want to go into a courtroom situation and hem and haw and stammer and not have been versed on what the case is, what the background is, and have to give testimony, especially with the sharp defense attorneys that are out there. And I don't want to show up at council meetings and not have the proper background. In this case, the proper background means reading the materials that are put in front of us, regardless of how boring and lengthy it may be at times, and making sure when you get to council, you've got a good idea of what's taking place so we don't belabor the overall meeting by asking questions.
That makes a lot of sense because you had to help the government make a case, and so you had to be extremely detail oriented.
Absolutely.
And so folks, he is extremely detail oriented, and he reads everything, and he makes sure that if there are some things that may not kind of fit or make sense or that may have contextual issues, he really brings that up. All I have to say, Mr. Malinowski, and I love you to death, I would never have wanted to be your daughter and have you read
Speaking
my
about my
papers.
daughter, if I can digress a little bit, they're
Sure.
coming next week to visit us from West Virginia, and she called yesterday and spoke to my wife, and my wife said that my daughter has been telling those 3 grandchildren that, now remember, Grandpa is very, very strict. Don't do anything to upset him. And so she's getting them into the habit.
She's getting them in the mode.
Into the mode. Grandpa's strict. Remember that. Grandpa's strict.
You
so
probably just had to, but it really, I had to do a little bit of study on the FBI, and unlike the CIA, where it was just a little bit more fast and loose, to be a G-man, to be an FBI man, you had to really deal within the boundaries of things. And so that, I'm sure that you probably are that type of person anyway, but probably your training has just made you really make the case.
Well, thank you. I'd like to say that it has, but I will say I can tell you stories about some of the fast and loose individuals that we had also.
In the FBI? Yeah. Well, we'll do that for the next one.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for providing us with your perspective on things.
You're welcome, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to get out there some of the words and messages to my constituents.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Council Corner. And for more up-to-date information about county programs and services, you can visit our website at rcgov.us. And also, you can listen to us every Friday on Richland Radio from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on WGCV AM 620. For Council Corner, I'm Stephanie Snowden. Make it a good one.